Hello and thank you for joining me today. Today I'm sharing with you a quick little, well, it's actually a tiny little wall piece that I created using this little beautiful piece of chipboard from Hobbilicious. See, it's Heart of Cogs. I picked this up at my Rusty Crown, and you can see that I painted the bottom piece of this heart with the gold, and I did a quick layer of white gesso and a little bit of acrylic paint on top of the remaining heart pieces. Here you can see that I'm just adding a little bit of, I believe it's aged brass Finnabair wax, and I say it's aged brass because that's my go-to wax. I love all of them, but that's the one I tend to pick up the most. Anyhow, so this is not a canvas. I honestly don't know what you would call this. It used to have a tiny mirror in it, and it was in my bathroom growing up, and it got stuck in a box of random shelves and things for your wall. So I painted it white, and I'm building a focal point on it, and I'm going to hang it in my craft room. So you can kind of see the little parts of like you can see the hole where the mirror was, and you can see a little bit of it at the end, but that's okay. I'm good with it. Anyways, because I did need to adhere the heart and the clock ahead of time so it would dry, I just kind of did that off camera, left it, walked away, and then I picked up the process here. So hopefully that brings us up to speed, and we'll continue with the project. While I'm gluing this down, I just wanted to say thank you again for joining me. If you do like this video, please consider giving it a thumbs up. And if you really enjoy it, you could always subscribe. That would be awesome. Anyhow, now I got my little blurb out. I'm going to continue stacking this chipboard together and adhering it. Now, I don't know if this is the way that it's supposed to be. This is the way I liked it, so that's the way I did it. But there's so many pieces you could use it in so many different ways. Now I'm just adding a little bit of gesso to the sides because it is a dimensional piece and you will see it on the wall. I wanted to make sure that the sides of the heart were all white. I am going in and adding my favorite texture paste, which is white crackle, and I'm just going to randomly apply this around the I say canvas because that's habit forming, but it's just a piece. So I'm just randomly adding white crackle paste around here and there, on top of the heart, on the edges, just wherever. And I honestly don't have any idea which way my collage is going to go. It'll probably, you know, I always wind up with a diagonal or a triangle or something like that, just because it's pleasing to the eye for me. But I really had no idea exactly where I was going. So now I'm adding some gesso to the couple pieces that I'm going to add to this for sure. And I sped this up quite a bit. My hand cannot move that fast, and I don't make you watch all of this, but I wanted you to know that I did add white gesso off camera to all these metal bits that I'm going to adhere to the canvas. It's a Prima-Claque, a Prima metal bit, and a Finnabair flower. Honestly, I don't know if you can get this metal piece that's in the center of the heart right now anywhere. I think it might be discontinued, but there will be a link if I can find it in my description box. And honestly, it's a pretty substantial piece, but if you can't find this piece, you can always use a mold. There's, I know that Frank Garcia's new molds are very similar in shape to this. Anyhow, so I have a bunch of these tiny little clocks because I use the bigger clocks a lot, but I never hardly ever use the itty bitty bitty little ones. So I thought I'd use this one today. And I'm just trying to glue that down, and you can see I made a little pencil mark to see where to put my glue because I always wind up with a gob of glue when I use these clocks. And now I'm adhering my flower, which is my actual focal point. And then I decide that I want a little bit more something added around the side of this. So I pulled out a bag of chipboard, and these are Wow Studio chipboard, and I love these chipboards. The only thing that makes me a little crazy, which for some people is amazing, is they have like the burn marks on them, so they get a little grungy, and I don't really rock the grungy look very well. So I just wipe them with a little bit of baby wipes, and they're so sturdy that it doesn't matter. It doesn't hurt them at all. But then I don't have that debris or added grunge on my project. So you can see I'm just, now I'm just gluing them down. And I will go back over and cover them with white gesso. I actually had like 2 or 3 coats because they're dark. So it took a second to get them covered. And you'll see that in just a second. And I'm just using gel medium to adhere this. And you can see that I've decided on a diagonal kind of across the piece. And there's the white gesso coming in. And I'm sorry if I get out of focus here. It's honestly a very tiny little piece. I think it might be 6.5 inches wide. So at times my hand covers the whole thing. Sorry. So I decided on these set of 3 Lindys. And I know that Steampunk Copper is one of them. Opal Seas is one of them. And I think that the other one I used was Mission Bells Brown. But again, I will have them linked. And I know that Lindys come with a spray, and I appreciate the spray, but I always seem to just use my paintbrush, and it's just because I have more control, and I really like to have the white space, so I don't like the spray to cover the area. Anyhow, I'm just moving around, and because I used a little bit of titanium white acrylic on top of the heart pieces, which is, my titanium white is actually kind of like a glossy finish. It's, and I'm sure that everyone's is, but anyways, it's a fluid acrylic, and so it beads up just a tiny bit, and I'm sorry, that's very rambled. Don't laugh at me too much. But it beads up just a tiny little bit, and that's fine, because I'm going to go in and add some acrylic paint. And I really loved the color, and I wanted it to be very soft and gentle. And then I'm just adding in a little bit of acrylic paint, and this is, I think, Chest of Gold or Heart of Gold, or what is that called? Yeah, Chest of Gold. It's a Sparks. So it has all kinds of mica in it, and it's so sparkly and beautiful. And I'm just working with water and making the paint spread. So I'll dab paint, squirt of water, push it around where I want it to go. And that way I don't get any overspray. Everything kind of goes where I want it to go, and if it doesn't go because there's so much gesso on the project, I can dab it off. And then I'm working with my heat tool to set everything in place. Now I'm bringing in another one of Finn's paints, and that one is Soft Satin, which is just it's just kind of like a shiny beige. It looks a little darker here, but it's really a beautiful color. So I'm mixing that in, and you can see I got all kinds of water all over my mat, and it's a hot mess, but it's starting to come together. I'm starting to like where it's coming at this point in time, and I'm like, okay, I got this. But these were a couple pieces of chipboard that I needed to use up for this month, and so I wanted to get this project out and done. Now this one, I am not 100% sure because I put it away too fast, but I'm pretty positive that this is Metallic Blackberry. And I just used a tiny bit of this, and I really watered it down quite a bit because I didn't want it to be that dark. But I needed to add some depth into the focal point because everything was just getting kind of washed out, and I couldn't see what I wanted to see, so I needed to add some depth back in with some color. So I picked a darker color. So this is kind of like my shadow color, I guess you would say. Some people use black for that. I just picked a darker. I always usually just pick a darker tone in the same color palette. But that's just me. And I'm just continuing through, and sorry, I know this gets a little repetitive, but I'm just adding paint, adding water, moving it around, pushing it around, and that's what I'm doing. And just continuing the process, and that's really how I build this up. Okay, now I'm going in and I'm adding a very tiny bit of white pearl paint across the top of the surfaces, and I'm just trying to bring back everything that's been washed out, and add my focal point in and trying to just highlight things. I'm just highlighting the very tips of things, and I'm using my hand as a palette. That's why you see my fingers up in there. because I don't have much paint on the brush, and I'm just going back for a little bit more, keeping my brush flat and dragging it across the surface. So I hope that makes sense, and I know this is so sped up, but I hate when videos drag and drag and drag, but at the same time I want to show you guys what I'm doing, so it's, you know, it's a toss up. Anyways, now I'm adding in some flowers, and these came in a set of like cluster flowers. They were 2 clusters, and I just cut them in half, so they're actually 4 pieces, and I'm gluing them in place. I'm using a little bit of 3D gel for this because I move these around quite a bit in the process, and if I used hot glue or something like that, it would dry too fast and I'd wind up damaging the flowers. But with the gel, it holds it in place while I'm able to pull them out and put them back in and kind of figure out my configuration. I do add a couple flowers that weren't part of this pack, and they had a little bit of gold on them, so they kind of stand out a little bit, and I fixed that later on, you can see. Now I'm adding just a couple art stones, and I'm just using a little bit of 3D gel on my brush, dipping my brush into my stones, which can be disastrous. There's your warning, but it works really well. So that's what I'm doing. I'm just dipping into my gel, dipping into my stones, and applying them to my piece. Now, like I said, those roses, there was 1 or 2 that I used extra that had a little bit of gold accent on the flower, and the rest of the flowers obviously didn't because they were from a different pack. So I'm just adding touches of gold. I think this is Dragon's Eye. It's a Sparks paint, and I'm just very lightly touching the tips of the flowers just to add a little bit of gold throughout the bouquet. And that's just kind of going to make it tie into my canvas a little bit more too. I do this a lot with my flowers. Sometimes I use a different color paint, or it's just like adding gesso to it or something like that. Now I've decided that my flower doesn't stand out enough, so I'm adding some old white wax to it, and I'm just really trying to make it pop. So that's it. I hope you enjoy the piece. Thank you so much for joining me today. Again, if you like this video, please give me a thumbs up, and please consider subscribing. Thank you so much. Sorry that was tongue-tied there at the end, but we're gonna go with it. You have a great day. Thanks. Bye-bye.